seeking the truth never gets old. Introducing June's Journey, the free-to-play mobile game that will immerse you in a thrilling murder mystery. Join June Parker as she uncovers hidden objects and clues to solve her sister's death in a beautifully illustrated world set in the Roaring '20s. With new chapters added every week, the excitement never ends. Download June's Journey now on your Android or iOS device, or play on PC through Facebook Games.
Now streaming on Apple TV+.
I am the accused of murder. Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
A limited series of that from executive producers David E. Kelley and J.J. Abrams.
Were you and Caroline romantically involved?
I lied about the affair, but I didn't kill her.
Your fingerprints were found in her bedroom.
I was in love with her.
So you snapped.
Starring Jake Gyllenhaal, Ruth Negga, and Renata Reinsve.
I betrayed my wife and my children, but I did not kill her.
Presumed Innocent. Now streaming only on Apple TV+.
A note to listeners, the following podcast contains content that may not be suitable for all audiences.
You know, it's kind of funny hearing Doug for like 10 years, and now I'm hearing, these tapes with Carol. I've never gotten to hear these tapes until now, until David and Dawn gave them over to me. They're pretty surprising. There's a lot of things she said that I was really surprised about. She took more accountability than I initially thought she would. I gotta say that.
So in other words, you're willing to take a lie detector test, no strings attached?
No strings attached, and I guarantee I could not pay my way through it because I'm far too emotional. I get upset very easily whenever this stuff is brought up.
If I can arrange to get the same two people that are doing him to do you, would you agree to it?
Absolutely. I'd even take it one step further. I would invite one or the other of us to be brought to the other person's prison, and both of us to be exposed to the same questions at the same time in the same room with the other person.
You are listening to Partners in True Crime. We are your hosts, Rob and Cindy Dorfman. Hi everyone, if you're enjoying the podcast, please leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts, even if it's one word.
And please subscribe to our website, www.partnersintruecrime. Follow us on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram to check out our weekly promos. We're also now on YouTube at Partners in True Crime. If you subscribe to our website, you'll be getting weekly emails from us and all kinds of promotions and things that we don't advertise on the podcast.
We appreciate all the great reviews, so please keep them coming as well. Just go on to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, drop us a review, subscribe, and tell your friends about what we're doing. Also, feel free to take pieces of the podcast, share with others. Our goal is to get the word out to as many people as possible, so thank you. Also, we are currently looking into the case of another young victim in Oklahoma, which seems very suspicious. 8 months ago, on September 4th, Noah Presgrove was 19 years old when he was found dead on a highway near Terrell, Oklahoma.
His family is still looking for answers to find out what happened in Noah's horrible death, and we are talking to them. In the coming weeks, we will be launching the What Happened to Noah Presgrove podcast, where we will go through the facts of the case with the family and try to help them find some answers. Check out announcements on Partners in True Crime for further information. In the late 1970s, early 80s, the iconic Hollywood Sunset Strip was the epicenter of the entertainment business, luring hopefuls from around the world.
But what many people did not know is that there were multiple serial killers operating in the Los Angeles area around the same time.
Serial killing duos began popping up around Southern California. The TOOLBOX killers, the SPEEDFREAK killers, Leonard Lake and Charles Ng, and the Sunset Strip killers, Douglas Clark and Carol Bundy.
The psychotic duo were trolling the Sunset Strip for runaways and prostitutes. But Carol, one of the few female serial killers, committed a heinous murder by herself.
Carol was a mother of two, and she was also a nurse who decapitated her lover, Jack, and carried his head in a bowling bag back to her partner, Douglas.
Douglas and Carol were involved in a sick and twisted game of deviant behavior and murder. They were eventually caught after Carol admitted the crimes to a coworker.
They were arrested. Clark was sentenced to death row, convicted of the murders of 6 women, and Carol testified against him, pled guilty for 2 murders, and received a life sentence.
Over the years, Douglas Clark has maintained his innocence, claiming that Carol was the one who killed everyone, not him.
Clark was so convincing that a lot of people began to question his guilt and turned on Carol.
Today, we're going to hear an interview that Mike McNamara conducted with Carol Bundy from prison.
It's not very often that we dive into a female serial killer, so it's a chilling interview, and Laura is going to unpack it for us.
Okay, we're back with our serial killer whisperer, Laura Brand. She is still out of California at an undisclosed location. We're starting a little late tonight because she was on the phone with someone. I'll let her tell you a little bit about that. But today, what we're going to do is last week we had David and Dawn Coop on, who had struck up a relationship with Douglas Clark, and they spent talking to him about 4 years, and they were going to write a book about all this, and then Douglas died. And then, so they had all this information. They reached out to Laura and they're like, they wanted to just wipe their hands clean of all this serial killer stuff. And so they gave her a bunch of tapes that they got a hold of with Carol Bundy. And there were some pretty intense interviews that was done by a Vanity Fair.
No, I think it was Rolling Stone.
Was it Rolling Stone? I think it was Vanity Fair.
I think it was Vanity Fair. Yeah.
Yeah. By a writer for Vanity Fair, and he spent a lot of time talking to her. And these tapes are just crazy. It's crazy to just kind of see her thought process and what she was saying. So, Laura, tell us a little bit about what you learned in those recordings before we start playing them for our listeners, and then we can just dive in and just kind of analyze what she's talking about.
Yeah, we can dive in. I'll start to analyze. It's kind of funny hearing Doug for like 10 years. And now I'm hearing, these tapes with Carol. I've never gotten to hear these tapes until now, until David and Dawn gave them over to me. They're pretty surprising. There's a lot of things she said that I was really surprised about. She took more accountability than I initially thought she would. I got to say that. She backtracked a lot. But they're all very interesting. And, her memory, I said this in the last episode, her memory is sharper than I thought, because I was thinking maybe there was a possibility of DID, but after reviewing the tapes, I don't see that or think that anymore from how sharp her memory is.
I think it's important too to mention that Carol was Doug's counterpart in the Sunset slayings of the 70s and 80s, and Doug spent most of his life saying that he was innocent and that Carol was the only one who committed any of the murders, until Laura spoke to him when we were recording her, and he finally slipped and admitted that he was there and that he did pull the trigger. So it's interesting for us now to be hearing from Carol's side of the story, because we never really analyzed anything about her before really went into discussion, because we were talking to Doug and you were talking to Doug, and his stories, I mean, he just does not stop talking. But there's still a lot of victims from these murders. How many do you think are still out there, Laura?
We know that there are 4 unidentified, just connected to their case. So, I mean, that is 4 we know of. So there's probably a lot more once we start digging through. Dawn and kind of David passed the torch to us, saying like, here you go, here's everything we've collected. So I'm sure we're going to find a lot more, just like we did with Bittaker and Norris. We'll have to see. But we know there are 4 unidentified as of now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't remember did Douglas tell you, what did he tell you about Carol before we start diving in here on her tape?
No, he blamed everything on her, as well as Jack. So Jack, you are going to hear mentioned. So Jack was Carol's, what was it? I guess he owned the apartment complex that she lived in and was her landlord for a time, but they also had a sexual relationship. He was married with kids. They still had a sexual relationship. And towards the end of their crime spree, Carol murdered him alone inside of his own van, and she decapitated him and brought his head back up to Clark to show Clark. Now, Doug has always said that he was part of these killings. And if, the last episode we recorded with Dawn and David, they also said they believe he was the third killer, that he actually was involved with Doug and Carol, which is a real possibility. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And do we know why Carol just snapped and decapitated him?
Possibly rejection. There was a lot of rejection, that he didn't want to see her anymore. He wanted to cut off the affair. So it's always been speculated that possibly that had been the trigger, loss of love. The 2 main triggers for serial killers, when they kill, is loss of love or loss of job. So it is possible, loss of love for Carol triggered that, his rejection of her.
So abandonment. They can't deal with the abandonment.
True. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, let's let's dive in here and see what she has to say.
I'll take a lie detector test too, anytime you want to. And I could not take a lie detector test. I'm too emotional.
Would you be willing to take one?
Absolutely.
With no strings attached?
No strings attached.
No court orders or anything?
No. Only stipulation, stay out of the van the night Jack died.
Okay, well that's irrelevant anyway.
Yeah, okay.
So in other words, you're willing to take a lie detector test, no strings attached?
No strings attached, and I guarantee I could not fake my way through it because I'm far too emotional. I get upset very easily whenever this stuff is brought up.
If I can arrange to get the same two people that are doing him to do you, would you agree to it?
Absolutely. I'd even take it one step further. I would invite one or the other of us to be brought to the other person's prison, and both of us to be exposed to the same questions at the same time in the same room with the other person. I don't know that the authorities would go for it.
Yeah, I'd rather think that's perhaps too outrageous for their taste, but
I would
it's an
certainly be
interesting
willing
idea.
to do it. Now, the second part of my question is, if Douglas was truly innocent of all of the things, the first part was, why would he have come up with all of these ideas of the Kathy thing, and
What do you mean the ideas?
why not just deny
Can we
that
pause it right
he
there?
knows anything about it?
What?
What were you
Can we
gonna say?
pause it? I'm having
Yeah.
lots of thoughts as just listening to that little bit of it. Highly manipulative. Just from hearing that little bit, she's managing your impression of her. She just decapitated, Jack, her former lover, in the back of his van, but she's saying, I'll take a lie detector test. I'm very sensitive, very emotional. I can't, so it's like,
Yeah, it's a little hard to believe that she's very emotional and sensitive when she cuts someone's
right.
head off.
So she's protesting that she's very, emotional, but she wants to be helpful. She wants to, take a lie detector test. Again, that's managing your impression of her. I got nothing to hide. I'm the good one. I'm the kind one. Let me take a lie detector. But don't go there about Jack. I just don't want to go there about Jack.
Yeah.
You can see decapitated him.
Yeah. Exactly. Don't talk about anything that I did.
Yeah, stay away from that. But I'll take a lie detector test.
Yeah.
But I'm so emotional. Yeah.
Interesting. All right, let's go back.
He knows anything about it. An innocent man would deny.
He did deny it.
Then he turns
His
around.
transcripts are riddled with denials. I mean, that's...
Sure, but then he turns around and you're telling me that he said that he was in the car when Kathy got killed. Wait, he's admitted that he knew one of the girls that got killed.
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
But the point is, he would deny any knowledge of
No,
having,
he's
if he
being
was
absolutely, I mean, from his point of view, he's being absolutely honest. He's saying, I was in the car when Kathy was killed, Carol shot her, I have the proof, I did know Gina Moreno, I absolutely denied killing her, and all these questions are going to be asked from him. I don't, maybe he can beat the test, maybe he can't, but at least he's going to get asked.
Then the next question I have.
As a matter of fact, I would like you to give me the questions that you would ask him.
Well, I don't know. Do they always have to be answered yes or no? Those are the only options.
I believe so.
Okay. I'll think of some.
You might think of that.
I'll think of some, and then I'll mail them to you.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Because I can feed them to the people.
My next, and meanwhile, ask him the same thing. What questions would he ask me? I might as well be fair about it. That's my main premise in this all the way through is to be fair. And that's why I've agreed to see you and so forth. And I'll get into that later on. But my next question is, why did he go to the trouble of fabricating the story with Veronica Conklin and having Veronica agree to perjure herself and come down and say that I said certain things and so forth and so on?
Well, he thinks that's not the case. That Veronica came up with these. I mean, I've read her letters. That's not the way they come across.
All right, can you give us some context on that little exchange?
Okay, so I want to start at the beginning where she's talking about, I'll take the lie detector. And then actually, I love the question that Mark posed to her. What questions should I ask you? And she's like, and she falters, Now, here's the thing about lie detector tests. Anybody with antisocial personality traits, anything, they can actually pass a lie detector test. They are not really, personally, I don't like them or I just don't endorse them because anybody with antisocial personality can actually pass them because, our nervous systems are different from somebody with antisocial personality. Ours may spike, theirs doesn't. They don't feel fear. They don't feel stress like we do. They're able to pass it very flawlessly, actually.
Yeah, no, Gary Ridgway passed twice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's very easy for them to do so. So, I never take that into account when I'm looking at the offenders I do because they like you said, Gary Ridgway passed them. I can think of a ton of other ones that have also passed, it's because of their nervous system is different from ours. Let's see. But I love the question where he said, what do you want me to ask you? And it threw her. That's like when I asked the offenders, what are you feeling? It throws them because they're not having the same emotions. She didn't expect that question to be asked to her. And then she jumps right into, we'll ask him. She throws it to Doug. Now, if you listen to Doug, like you guys have, he always throws it back on her. Well, what did Carol do? What did Carol say? They're throwing it back on each other, just like kind of Bitter Norris. Same thing, which is what you're always going to get with the crime partners. Rob did Shermantine when they're throwing it back to each other, Ing and Link throwing it right back at each other. Well, Link didn't get a chance, but pretty much, yeah, they're throwing it back at each other. So she throws it back on Doug, and he doesn't even have the opportunity to say, well, what about Jack? Because she murdered Jack in the van, but he can't ask her about that. So she's managing, that perception that you have of her. And then he starts to go into specifics, and she starts to buckle down and start asking more and more questions as you hear her do so.
Yeah.
As far it's interesting because we don't really ever discuss women serial killers, and she is a woman, and she was, involved in a lot of murders. So, yeah. I think it's interesting from your perspective. What do you think caused her?
Well, her and Doug's backgrounds are very different. We know, Doug grew up in a very privileged household, while Carol, she grew up in LA in the Hollywood scene, but her parents weren't well off, nowhere near what, Doug's parents were. And, her mother died at a very early age, but at 10, she reported that her mother started to reject her, even before her mother's death. So her mother died at a very young age, started to reject her. Then her father started to psychologically, physically, and sexually abuse her. So, you have the trifecta going on at a very, impressionable age, those early teen years, the preteen years into the teen years. She's being, emotionally abused, physically abused, emotionally abused, and sexually abused. And you look at where she ended up with Doug doing these types of crimes. Yeah, it makes sense. So when I look at, one of their victims was decapitated with the sweatshirt wrapped around the head, laid out, and the sweatshirt said, Daddy's girl. I don't think that had anything to do with Doug. I think that had to do with Carol because her father sexually abused her and she wrapped the head in a daddy girl sweatshirt. That speaks more to, Carol than just Doug. I don't see Doug picking out a sweatshirt. Instead, I see it more being Carol, crying out her own pain and, her own psychopathy in a way and wrapping the head in a daddy girl sweatshirt after what her father had done to her.
Do you think if she hadn't met Doug that she'd become a serial killer?
I don't know if she would have become a serial killer. She's definitely deviant. She's definitely violent. It's hard to say. Would she have gone on to killing? Possibly. A serial killer? I don't know. Sometimes the two pairs just meet, and I think Doug was more of the deviant one that brought it out in her. So I don't think she was like a born innate serial killer. I think that was more speaking towards Doug. But there's definitely, look what she did to Jack. It is not easy to decapitate someone.
That's what I was going to ask you. How did she do this by herself? Was she big?
It's actually pretty hard because you have to actually go towards the weakest part of the spine and actually sever between the C3 and C7 vertebrae, which is not easy to do.
Yeah.
It would take incredible strength.
She was a nurse though, right?
She was. Right, so
she knew anatomy. She knew, what kind of nurse was she?
I don't know specifically. I think I know she worked in a hospital. So I believe she was an ER nurse.
Okay.
So she had enough knowledge. Yes.
Yeah. And
how bizarre is that though, that she became a nurse when she has no empathy?
Well, a lot of serial killers who are dubbed angels of mercy are nurses. Actually, a lot of female serial killers become nurses.
Yeah. There was that one guy in New Jersey they did that movie on where
Charles
he was,
Flynn.
yeah, the one, and he was like
That was a
injecting,
horrible movie.
he was injecting him with insulin or something
Oh, it
like
was
that.
awful.
And for like
He was working at the hospital I was born in, when I was born there, actually. Isn't that
What?
crazy?
You
Yep.
have so many
Charles
crazy
Flynn.
connections.
What
Too
hospital were
many
you born in?
crazy. Yeah.
She
What
was born
hospital?
in New Jersey.
Where? What hospital?
What was it? Voorhees, New Jersey, and then he moved. What's even weirder is he moved to Pennsylvania, Allentown, and that's where I moved as a child too. So we
Wow.
were almost, yeah, the two hospitals during my childhood he had worked at. Yeah.
Wow. Voorhees is right next to where I grew up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's crazy. That's
And
crazy.
now he's at Trenton State with my cousin.
Oh my God.
Isn't that crazy?
Totally. That's
Have
insane.
you talked to him at all?
I have completely blocked him, and I have reached out to the victims advocacy at the courts and asked him to be put on a list for him never to contact me.
Oh,
This
wow.
This is just within the last week. Yeah.
Wow. All right.
He had written me a very disturbing message, and it was yeah.
Wow.
I'm sorry. It's awful.
You got a tough job, girl. You got a tough job.
With my family and then my work. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's dive back in and see what else she has to say.
Before we do that, how did she meet? A lot of people don't know about what these two were doing. Doug and
okay, so they met at what was it? A rodeo bar. What are those called? Like the, country bars.
Country bar.
Yeah, the country bars.
Was that the one up in like North Hollywood or something?
Yes, North Hollywood.
Was it the Palomino Club? Was it the
No,
Palomino?
it's no longer there. I forget the name, but it was right.
The Palomino was the only one in North Hollywood, and it was there forever. And it was
No, I think it was another name, but it was what was it? What was it? Oh, I can't think of the name of the sector of LA, but it was they would do the square dancing and everything, but it shut down. Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, where is Universal? Why am I blanking on this?
Universal Studios, Studio City.
Studio City. It was in Studio City, yeah.
Okay. Oh, Denim and Diamonds?
I feel like, Cindy, are you finding it?
Yeah.
The exact name of it.
There was only a couple clubs like that in the Valley, and one was the Palomino, which was all the way up Lancashire. It was all the way, like, way up.
What was it?
It was called the Little Nashville.
Oh, Little Nashville.
That's what it was. Yeah, it was like, it was some kind of country. So
Okay,
yeah,
so
they met
North
there.
Hollywood. It was in North Hollywood.
All right, so they met there, and that's where it started, huh?
Yeah, so Doug was kind of a predator in LA, and it's kind of weird, he's so privileged, but he was trolling for women he could find, dumpy looking women like Carol that he could kind of seduce and move right into their place and have a free place to stay, which is what he did.
So he didn't have a job?
Well, no, actually, he was working as an engineer at a factory. He was doing.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, but he was still like just a parasite. He was just a straight psychopath, just mooching off of everything he could, finding women, lonely women.
Yeah.
Crazy.
She was not a very she looked like she was lonely sitting at a bar by herself the day that she met him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And these predators look for those types of women. The ones that look lonely, just went through a heartbreak. They know, they can spot them.
Sure. They see broken and they go right for it. So they meet at the bar, and then did they start dating? He moved in with her, right?
He moved right in with her, and they slept together a couple times, but then she tried to charge him for rent. He's like, I'm not paying for rent. But it actually moved from that into the relationship that it became, which was this, killing couple kind of relationship with her trolling, getting victims for him.
Yeah.
And then,
on these recordings, she sounds like a scorned lover.
Yeah.
So the first victim, who was the first victim? Do we know? Do we remember?
I don't know the name. It was well, I think the first that we know of is the two girls from Orange County, which was Cindy and Gina.
Yeah.
And that was the reason they even got on police radar.
All right, when we look at that, let's listen a little bit more.
These letters is, to the best of my recollection, this is what Carol told me.
Carol told her nothing at all because I never discussed my case.
Well, I mean, maybe she's lying to her teeth, and quite honestly, she's a miserable witness, but, her crimes are right out there. But from her letter, she's pretty straightforward. She says, I don't remember all of it all that well, but this is what I remember Carol telling me. And she listened.
The reason that I did not discuss my case with Veronica Conklin, while I did discuss it with many other people while I was in the county jail, the reason I didn't discuss it with her is because I was scared of her. She was involved in that Bianchi thing, and she was a total fruitcake. She told me the story about she and Bianchi had been out together, and they had kidnapped a girl and tied her to a chair and tried to electrocute her, and she was very graphic in the description of it. And she terrified me because, and she had written a play that was brutally graphic in its violence, and she was trying to tell me about the play that she had written. And she just seemed to me that she was totally obsessed with serial killers and that sort of thing. And it was just something that made me extremely squeamish.
She was squeamish, the woman who decapitated somebody?
Yeah.
Who's she talking about?
Exactly.
I don't even know who she's talking about, which is, I think she said in the beginning it was one of the investigators, and he was into serial killers or maybe telling her a story. It sounded like she was writing a fictional something, but then you see it. She's managing your perception of her. Oh, that person freaked me out. I'm squeamish that she decapitated somebody in the back of the van solely. So you're seeing like, yeah, this is her managing your perception of her as this like little doe, and this is how she was painted, as this like little doe, you know.
Well, yeah, that's why so many people like started to believe that maybe Doug was innocent, because at first she had presented herself as this innocent, you know, he took advantage of me, and then all of a sudden it started to flip and people started to think, wait a minute, maybe she's a scorned lover, maybe Doug didn't have anything to do with this, maybe she purposely blamed him. I mean, there was a lot of people who really believed that he was innocent.
What I'm seeing is two highly manipulative people who had, you know, their own, you know, sexual proclivities coming together, and really being a partnership. This is what I'm seeing with these tapes.
Yeah, no, it was a marriage of murderers.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, highly unique.
Serial killers and that sort of thing, and it was just something that made me extremely squeamish. In fact, I found out about her and Douglas setting up this business about her coming down here to testify through the newspaper. Nobody told me about it. I read it in the paper.
Well, I mean, she's an absolute crazy one. Let me ask you some of these other things you've said, though, and tell me what's going on. You said once, and I believe this is what you told the police, he had me eating out of his hand. I must have had a bad streak in me already.
What is that related to?
I think you were referring to Doug there.
But I don't know what it's in reference to, because I don't remember ever saying that. You know, this is many years ago.
Yeah, okay.
I'd have to know what it was related to.
You once said, maybe you remember this, I was as close to Jack as Jack's wife was, in many ways closer.
I probably said that because Jack had led me to believe that we were going to be married, that he was in love with me, and so forth and so on.
Did Jeanette know her husband?
She knew her husband better than I did. I believe she did, yeah. At the time, my perceptions were different than what they are now, because at the time I thought she was really a bitch, and in fact she was a woman trying to defend her marriage, and I didn't see it that way because Jack had me believing that he didn't love Jeanette, that Jeanette was going to leave him and that they would get a divorce, and that they couldn't get a divorce because they had all her cancer bills to pay off and so forth. And of course I had believed all that because I didn't know Jeanette's side until much later on.
Well, and then she got pretty bitter and made some very damning testimony against you in your sentencing area, preliminary hearing.
I don't know. I don't remember what she did say.
Well, she's talking about how that your kids would come and corrupt her kids and sexually and all kinds of things sexually you've done to your children.
I'll tell you something about, this is second-hand or third-hand information, but if you can find Linda Justianana, who was the wife of the assistant manager at Valerio Gardens.
Skeptical about custom beauty? I get it. My feed is flooded with customize this, personalize that. Everybody's promising to fix my split ends, my dry skin, and my fine lines. And you know that all these products I buy, none of them have worked.
Lots of products she buys.
But now I'm so excited because I get to share this with you guys. We have partnered with pros, and when they say custom, they actually mean it. It's not a gimmick. Your formula does not exist without you.
And each and every bottle of Pros custom hair and skincare is made to order, personalized with a unique blend of naturally powerful and proven effective ingredients to meet your needs.
They have this in-depth consultation that analyzes 80 factors for a complete view of you, your life, and your beauty goals.
Wow, that's a lot. And they get personal. Pros gets to the root of the problem. They cover everything from your diet, concerns, to exercise and stress to uncover what's impacting your hair and skin health.
I love the fact that they even asked me for my zip code to assess the hard water, because that's a terrible problem in my neighborhood. And how, oh my God.
Hard water.
Right?
We have really bad hard water.
Really bad. So, and then they also tell you how this impacts my hair and my skin. And then they recommend an entire routine of truly personalized products that were not created until after I placed my order. So there's nothing pre-mixed, nothing off the shelf. And I know this from experience that their one-of-a-kind formulas equal 1 in a million results. Since I switched to Pros, my hair is shinier, stronger, fuller, and my skin is not dry. And I live in the desert. And everyone is noticing.
Yep, I noticed. You look fantastic.
I
can definitely see how Cindy's hair has grown so much since she has been using Pros. But don't just take our word for it. In a third-party, double-blind, dermatologist-supervised controlled clinical study, the gold standard in research studies, Pros proved personalized works better than off-the-shelf alternatives.
Try it for yourself and get the healthiest hair in 30 days or your money back. Pros is so confident that you'll love the results that they're offering our listeners an exclusive trial offer so you can see the difference custom care can make. You gotta try it.
50% off your first subscription order at pros.com/PITC.
That's pros.com/PITC for your free consultation and 50% off your one-of-a-kind formula. Pros.com/PITC.
I'm sorry, how do you spell the last name?
Justianano, I believe it is. Justianano. You've got it on your tape anyway. Linda is Tony Justianano's American-born wife. Tony is a Mexican national. And they were the assistant managers under Jack, and Linda used to babysit for both Jack's kids and my own. Linda told me that Jeanette Murray had told her that Jack and she often had sexual intercourse in front of their own children because Jack felt that it would be healthy for them to know what human physical love was all about. And their children were small. They were 5 and 2 years old.
All right, so this Jack guy wasn't no altar boy as well. I mean,
if you believe what she's saying,
right.
too.
We don't know what she's saying is true or not because she
don't.
was jealous and she's trying to flip it on the wife. And, you know, the wife, she was very manipulative in that, the way she was talking about,
you know,
Jack's wife.
He states, you know, I knew him better than his wife. And then he says, you said that. And she was like, well, at the time, you know, she was painting everything back on Doug and Jack, you know, as the bad guys,
right.
by making herself again look like, and it's funny because she uses a lot of the same moves that Doug used, you know, when she said, go find this person. Doug did the same exact move. Go find this person. Okay, let's go down your rabbit hole, you know. Doug used that same move. Yeah, I don't know if I believe that's true. Now, what's funny, I will say, is
she did express the motive though, because she said that he said he was going to leave his wife and he was in love with her. So that's right. There's hell hath no fury than a woman scorned. And she took care of that.
Oh yeah, she is the poster child for that. Well, you know, it's funny because she says, you know, well, they blamed my kids because she had 2 little boys, for doing sexual stuff in front of their kids. And then she goes, but they were having sex in front of their kids. We don't know if that's true or not, but I do know her son is now a registered sex offender.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Is is Jack's wife still alive?
You know, I don't know. I don't know.
Because according to that, it sounds like she had cancer at the time.
Yeah. I mean, again, she's saying this about a woman with cancer.
Yeah.
Right.
Called her a bitch. Called her a bitch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can hear
but then
it.
trying to spin it as like her and the wife were victims of Jack. You know. Yeah.
But you can hear the manipulation.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we talked about this with both David and Dawn last week, but it sounds like she's DID.
I mean, there's a lot of signs of it. There are.
You can almost hear the gears shifting.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you can see two sides of her brain like clicking on and clicking off. You know.
Well, you know, what made me think about it was, you know, Doug had said when she was in the back of the car with one of the victims, who was already dead, she started speaking in a little girl's voice. Now with DID, that's actually one of the personalities can actually manifest as a child. If you watch the movie Split is a great example.
Yeah.
Where there's that childlike personality that does happen when, you know, the personality split. There's usually that inner child, you know, will come out. And so when he said little girl, I was like, Doug, that is evidence of DID, because sometimes that personality that splinters off is an inner child talking to you. It's like talking to a child. That's what had first, you know, initially, you know, raised awareness with me about, is that a possibility? Mm-hmm. Is this something to look into? I mean, and, you know, typically how DID manifests is from childhood sexual abuse. That is the most common, you know, cause for it. So, and then we know Carol was, you know, physically abused, sexually abused, emotionally abused. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Crazy to hear it. You can actually, like I said, you can hear all the levels, the different levels, even the tone of her voice, how it changes.
It is. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, let's listen more.
So, now, she has accused my son of pulling her little girl's panties down. I can't say that it did or did not happen, because kids are kids and they want to explore. And if it had been the other way around, if a little boy, a 9-year-old boy, had pulled my little girl's panties down, I'd have been annoyed, and that would have been the end of it, because that's what kids do. Linda said that the little girl had been found in the presence of another little boy with her panties down, and that she did not believe that my son Christopher was responsible for that. I can't make a value call on it because I wasn't there at the time the incident happened, but that was the incident where it caused Jack to pull the gun on my son. Maybe it's because I was the mother of a boy and not the girl, but I wasn't so upset over the incident with the children happening. I just know that kids are curious, and that it's very unlikely that even if Chris had been responsible for pulling the little girl's panties down, that it would have gone any further than him looking. And I really don't think that he would have done it because he was not interested in girls at that time. He's changed his tune since then, but he's 20 years old now.
Okay. You said also, again, about Jack, talking about his death, you said what caused it was panic.
Yeah. Panic and anger. The description that I gave to the police really was not accurate, because I said I wasn't mad at him or anything. I mean, nobody kills somebody without a reason. Well, unless they're a serial killer behind what happened before, but obviously something had upset me the night that Jack died. I mean, I just wouldn't have gotten into the van in a state of panic, fear, or whatever, and then just in a state just to say, oh, well, nothing was wrong, I just killed him. I mean, that just doesn't happen. And I'm surprised that the police didn't. This is what bothers me about a lot of this. The police did not bother to dig, to break me down and make me tell what went wrong. They just accepted it and let it go at that. No police psychologist ever sat down and tried to determine my state of mind at the time of the August 11th interviews. I mean, they just took what I said as gospel.
In fact, they took it, just about everything you said as gospel.
In all these years since then, I've never tried to straighten out the Jack Murray thing as to why I killed Jack Murray when I said that, oh, well, I wasn't mad at him or anything. I never tried to straighten that out because I felt that If they felt I was lying in one area, then it would draw question to everything else I ever said anywhere else. And the business with Douglas Clark was just too important to allow any kind of a discredit to come along, because I will not let Douglas Clark out of prison.
Wow. She won't let Douglas Clark out of prison.
Mm-hmm.
She holds all the keys. She said the police didn't properly interview her and find out why she killed Jack Murray and cut off his head. She was so, why didn't they do that? I mean, how dare they didn't find out the psychological reasons why she killed Jack Murray?
Right. I mean, it's all blame shift. Blame shift to Doug, blame shift to Jack. Now it's the police.
What is that personality disorder of blame shifting? If you don't take any responsibility for anything, you just continuously blame.
Psychopathy.
It is.
Psychopathy. Yeah.
With a lot of healthy
accountability.
With a healthy mix of narcissism.
Oh yeah. Well, narcissism is included in psychopathy. So you can hear it. Yeah. There's no accountability. There's a narcissism. But then she almost gets like a sick thrill. If you notice, she goes, I mean, why would I kill him unless I was just like a serial killer?
Right. I mean, she thought that was funny.
And she said she also said that Jack died, that he wasn't killed. It's like all these little words that you pick up. When Jack died, he didn't die. You killed him.
Manufacturing, your perception of her, oh, he died. Not like he had his head sawed off in the back of a van by you. You know what I mean?
I'm still I can't wrap my brain around a woman being able to do that to a man. Like without him, the rage she must have had. I mean, it's just not what we normally know, or read about or hear about or.
No, I mean, it's very unusual for a woman. I mean, typically you don't see too many female serial killers, and you don't see them, doing decapitation.
Yeah.
And then not only that, she brought his head up into the apartment to show Doug to laugh about.
Well, she was the pupil. He was the master. So it was like, and then she quickly overtook the master.
Mm-hmm. Like, look what I did.
Exactly.
Look at this. Right. Mm-hmm.
Like she was trying to one up him or something.
Yeah. And I've seen the crime scene photos of Jack, and you would never even believe a woman could do that.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, we've seen some of them. It's just horrific. It's almost like she was completely possessed by a demon or something. I mean, it's just insane.
Well, that's where it goes back to the DID. Could that have been a factor into this?
Explain that a little bit, the DID.
So there is another factor of DID too. Is so you have your core personality. Like I have my personality, you guys have yours, right? Now, say you guys went through an extreme childhood trauma that caused the personality to actually splinter off. So it would go core, and then it would be personality 1 or 2, right? Now, once the personality splits, it can actually keep splintering, and it typically does if it's not caught, right? Now, typically, once that splinters off, there's one personality of that inner child, which I was describing, but also another personality that also is formulated is actually the abuser of that child. So they'll actually take on the personality of that, the abuser that they actually, this actually stemmed from. So it is possible that there is, say this is DID, and I'm totally speculating right now. So say
DID being, just explain what that is for people.
So it's dissociative identity disorder. So just like I said in the movie Split, this is when you have, it was formerly known as multiple personality disorder. Now it's known as DID. And just like I said, the movie Split, that's what it is now, commonly known as DID. So like I said, it is multiple personalities. And for a long time, it wasn't even recognized as like a real, occurrence or syndrome or disorder. So now we have actually had documented cases. It's been studied. It is real. And like I said, there can be a child personality and there can be a personality of the abuser. So is it possible? San Quentin. is it possible that she did have the abuser and this is where she's getting it from? Now, I do have a person in my life who does have DID, so I've actually seen it up close and personal. And this is actually one of the reasons I actually kind of want to go into DID on top of psychopathy and specializing about it, because I've actually seen it up close and personal with a dear friend of mine. And they have taken on I've seen their child personality as well as their abuser personality.
No, that's too bad.
Mm-hmm.
Terrible.
Yeah, it's a very horrific disorder to have and to see somebody go through.
How do they medicate someone for that? Do they
Yeah, is it medication or is it therapy?
It's a lot. It's a lot. It's therapy, medication. I mean, it's an extreme mental illness that they suffer from, and it takes somebody, years specializing in training to treat somebody with it.
Does it have some of the similar qualities of PTSD?
I mean, yes. So, okay, so a trigger can happen, like everybody has triggers, or like something can trigger PTSD, right? Like veterans can hear fireworks and be triggered. Same thing for DID. But the thing is with DID, you don't know what it could be because you don't know what their, abuse was from. So that one little trigger will actually happen, and then suddenly they're a different personality. I actually turned on the video camera one time with my friend and didn't realize that was the trigger because they had been raped while videotaped.
Oh.
And I was like, oh my God, what happened? What did I do? And then I realized, oh, I was like taking a video and realized that had like spun them into the other personality.
Do you know, I mean, because lately they've been treating a lot of PTSD with psychedelics, and it's been proven to being very helpful.
So they used to actually treat this with psychedelics. That's how psychologists would actually dig through the trauma is, psychedelics can actually bring the trauma to the forefront. First, psychologists actually, see and actually go, okay, well, this is where it's stemming from. It opens that subconscious mind for a psychologist to actually dig through and be like, okay, this is where it's stemming from. I believe there is, a lot of profound effects from using psychedelics. I mean, there's an 80% heroin cure rate from using ayahuasca, other treatments like that.
It rewires the brain.
It does. It does.
I mean, you can get it like, some form of that, the non-psychedelic form. I mean, like I take lion's mane every day, which is a psychedelic mushroom that doesn't have the psychedelic component in it, but it has all the same brain healing entities that it says. So it helps rewire your brain, and it works. It definitely.
No, it does. I know I have so many friends that are off, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications, just doing like a dose of like mushrooms a day. And they're completely off all like over the counter, prescription drugs completely. Just all,
completely natural.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Let's do a little bit more.
So before we go back, you think that, and obviously we don't know for sure, but just as an assessment from your own perspective, that she most likely had DID?
I wouldn't say that. I don't know yet because it's very hard to say because she's very highly manipulative. And then again, I'd have to take that, what Doug told me at face value of her with the little girl's voice. I didn't personally hear that to say, I just said, that is typical with DID. It's very hard to say. I would have to listen to, a lot of tapes of her. It's hard. I'm just saying it is a possibility. It is. I'm going to put it out there. It could be.
Okay.
Douglas Clark out of prison. If I have to see, if I was to straighten this out and go back to court, which I really hope to do someday, I could get the case reduced to probably 15 to life. Even a vague possibility.
Your case?
My case. Even a vague one murder, not two. Even a vague possibility of getting it reduced to voluntary manslaughter. If I was to tell everything that went on. I choose not to do that. I can stay in this prison the rest of my life, if it means keeping Douglas in here. It's really has been my main function all these years is to keep Douglas in prison. And if I have to die in prison, I'll die in prison. I knew at the time that I made the statements to the police that I was sacrificing the rest of my life. But it was that important to me. Douglas had to be stopped.
But wait, I don't see why these are mutually exclusive.
What do you mean?
I mean, I don't understand why if Doug actually did these things, why do you have to stay in prison to keep him in prison?
Because there's something called the fruit of the poison tree doctrine. There is no physical evidence linking Douglas Clark to the murders exclusive of my statements.
Correct.
Everything that I said led to a piece of evidence. One piece of evidence led to another, but it was a branch off of my original statements.
Right.
Without my statements to start with, the police could not have located any evidence on their own.
Right.
So the fruit of the poison tree doctrine holds here. If I go back to court, which I can do, and I really wish I could get out of here, but if I go back to court, I would have to fight the Miranda issue. If I fight the Miranda issue, I've got a very good chance of winning because my Mirandas were not well done. There's too much confusion over what my intentions were and how the police handled me. I mean, they read the Mirandas well and so forth, but I kept asking for clarification on how one aspect of the Mirandas applies to me and doesn't apply to another one, and there was too many questions.
When you read the transcript, I mean, they give you the thing and you keep talking, and they keep telling you and you
True.
keep talking and keep
True.
talking.
I know all of that. I know all of that.
I mean, I don't think you have any case at all.
I disagree with you. There is a chance. It's not.
Doug thinks you have a chance.
Yeah.
I've talked to a couple of attorneys. They say there's no way in hell, but maybe.
Well.
I mean, you and Doug know more about these things than I do.
Yeah. Well, I'm not any expert on it. I know nothing about the law. I haven't had a chance to study the law. Douglas has. I'm just knowing what he has told me on this particular issue, what several others have told me on this particular issue. It's just a chance. And if I were to fight it, my Mirandas knocks out every statement that I made on the August 11th tape. And if that does that, the fruit of the poison tree doctrine holds, and it eliminates any testimony on that date that I gave that could lead to...
so that's the end of Doug. In other words, so
yes,
then Doug gets off.
He walks, because there is no substantial case beyond, without my testimony, without my evidence, that will hold him.
Okay, so, and the reason, tell me this, so this is a personal bit of heroism that you are doing.
I don't want to think of it as heroism, it's just something that was necessary and is necessary, because I don't believe that Douglas could be safe out on the street again.
She's just Joan of Arc, isn't she?
Yeah.
She's just falling down on the sword. She doesn't want to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
She would love to get out. She could get out. She's on the Miranda thing, which, you know, the author, the writer basically says, there's no way it's happening. But in her mind, she's concocted this story that, you know, what she's doing is keeping Doug in prison by not talking. Now, I have a question for you. When they both got convicted and they were imprisoned, did they talk while they were in prison? Any letters exchanged or anything?
No, I don't think they were allowed, like Vicar and Norris. They kept them apart, thankfully. It's funny listening to her. She sounds just like Doug. I mean, the Miranda stuff, like the technicalities, like I can get off if they didn't read it right to me, or they didn't answer my questions while they were reading it, just like Doug. I mean, he was always filing lawsuits just like Bedecker, thinking they could outsmart everybody in the law. And, again, she's the savior, because, she's keeping Doug there and she put Doug away.
If she gets out, Doug gets out.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're going to sacrifice yourself to a life in prison.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Her voice is very disturbing because she is speaking like a little girl.
Yeah, she does. I was actually very surprised when I heard the tapes. It does not match her face.
No.
Not at all.
At all.
I think they say sometimes that people who speak with a little girl voice are stuck at the age of their abuse began.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Their emotional intelligence. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, what's very interesting about Carol too is actually because of the Long Island serial killer, there's a phenomenon called paraphilia called scategoria. Now, this is when they actually it's a sexual perversion. It's a paraphilia where you call. Okay. And we know that's what Rex did. He was calling the victims' families, talking about, what he did to her sister. And that's part of his signature, not his MO.
You mean physically calling? He was calling them?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And leaving
The
messages?
Long Island serial killer.
No. Talking to the victim's sister.
The victim's
Telling the victim's sister what he did to her. Yeah. And so this is part of what we call the signature. So this is different from the MO. This is something they're doing on top of the crime. They don't have to do, but it's a need for them to do it. Okay. So, and this is actually what led to him being caught, the Long Island serial killer. Now look at Carol. She was calling the police saying, like, there's a murder, my boyfriend's killing. And she was doing this consistently. I don't know if this would qualify as, the paraphilia that Rex had, the signature that Rex had. It's almost more for Carol, like a need for attention. Like she wanted to get this attention. I see a lot of like cries for attention, need for attention. And, with the decapitation, Doug always blamed Carol for that. The thing is, when you're taking off a head, besides for Jack, they took some of the female victims. It's known as what we call what is it called? Partmentalism? No, what is it? Oh, so when you're taking a human, it can be any of the limbs for sexual gratification, and using it for sexual pleasure. That's not something a woman does. That's actually something only a man would do. So we know that Doug was taking, parts of the body, typically the head, to use for sexual gratification because the semen was found inside one of the victims' heads. That is not something Carol is doing. So, when she decapitated Jack, is she bringing that up there for, to give to, Doug is like, I don't know.
Trophy. It's a trophy.
Yeah.
And it's like showing off. It's almost like a cat coming out of the woods and going to their their home and then leaving a dead mouse on the front porch.
Right. This is part of it's some type of sexual game these two have going on.
That's so sick.
Yeah. I had another question. It just escaped me. No, I can't remember. This is crazy.
It is really
She's
crazy.
very disturbing to listen to, I have to say.
She is. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I know what I wanted to ask. When she was calling the police department and basically telling them Doug's doing all this, did she identify herself or did she call anonymously?
Anonymously,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in a way, I think she wanted Doug to get caught, obviously, and it was probably a way of her exercising some of the guilt she had by participating in it to have it to stop.
Yeah, I really wonder. See, this is what makes me even consider DID again, because it's like she's getting off on doing this. She's doing it on her own. She's, bringing the head back up and laughing with Doug, but she's making these phone calls too, which is almost like they want to get caught. They always say serial killers want to get caught. I always say bullshit. I know Bittaker has even said to me I would have kept going and going. Same with Roy. I can't tell you how many have told me that they don't want to get caught.
No.
These guys they want to keep going. They do, especially if they're getting away with it. I don't believe that Carol wanted to be caught. I don't believe that Doug wanted to be caught. This was something else with Carol, whether, it was her calling for a need for attention or this was DID. There was something else at play here.
It just seems to me that she wanted to manipulate the entire narrative. Like she wanted to kind of not be under Doug's thumb, even though she was.
Yeah. Yeah. Now she could have also been doing this as counter forensics, thinking, I know we're going to get caught. We're being kind of sloppy,
Right.
kind of out in the open. Maybe if I make these phone calls, we get caught. I can now flip the script, which is what she did do or try to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she was completely manipulating the situation from the beginning. She enjoyed what she was doing.
And she was dealing with two abusive men again, harkening back to her abuses as a child. So this is her way she got back at both of them, killed one, decapitated, and the other one she ratted out to and cut a deal. So he got the death sentence and she got what she got.
When did she die?
2003, I think.
2003? It's a while ago.
Yeah, early on. I wish we could have interviewed her.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, yeah, because she's a talker.
She is.
I mean, for our listeners, we're only 15 minutes into this half-hour tape, and we got like 8 more that are equally as long.
And Doug was a talker too.
Both of them. They're the same person, I swear.
Yeah, she sounds a lot like him in the same manipulative. I'm going to set the stage and I'm going to manipulate the narrative and I'm going to make you think that I am the victim.
Yeah. The only difference is that she's easier to follow than Doug. She talks
Yeah.
like almost like a kindergarten teacher teaching people,
Yep.
what to do. We're gonna go to nap. That's very kind of deliberate and very the cadence. Whereas Doug is just like a machine gun.
Oh yeah.
He was like he'll
Completely.
he'll go to A to Z, back to L, and the Q, back to B. He just goes back. It's hard. He was so hard to follow.
Yeah.
At
Machine gun.
least, yeah.
Hmm.
She's much more linear in her speech patterns and
Yeah.
deliberate, but which makes it even more scarier because you can almost feel the wheels turning while
Yeah.
she's talking. You can see the manipulation. Whereas Doug is like in his staccato ness of talking. It was like you don't realize you were manipulated until after the fact.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
we had to go back. Like that time where he admitted we were sitting there listening, and I was like shooting you like that, and I'm like, it wasn't until we stopped rolling where I was like, did he just put himself at the crime scene?
Yeah.
You
He's
know?
he's one of those you interview and you're like, wait a minute. It's after the interview where it all starts to hit you. He's
Yeah,
going that fast at you.
yeah,
But I could see why people would have thought that he was innocent after listening to her.
Well, they're both actually really convincing and charismatic. I mean, if you
yeah,
listen to these tapes, like not knowing really who she was and just hearing the tapes, you'd be like, oh, like she really does have that like victim,
Mhm.
oh yeah,
aura about her, that
yeah,
voice, something with
yeah.
the
And she,
voice.
in one aspect, she'll take responsibility for it, but then the next aspect, she like takes two steps back and says, "Well, what could I have done?"
Right. Hmm.
And it just sounds like it was a scorned lover who wanted to have some power, and that's why she killed
Yeah.
Jack.
Really scorn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
mean, she was given the tools by Doug to learn how to kill unconditionally and just be able to wake up the next morning. That's the
Right.
thing I understand. The fact that, and she had kids. So it's like the
I know.
woman who, a female, it's just, like you said, this maternal instinct. She's raising children and she's going out and killing people and then
Hmm.
coming back and having to shift over to being a mother.
To be a mom, a nurse, going and helping people in the
Doug at least was
hospital.
like he was like your quintessential parasite, just going from
Right.
bed to bed and getting living off of other people. And he knew what he was. It almost was like she didn't really know what she was until Doug showed her who she was.
Well, you got to think, I mean, look at Bittaker and Norris, because you always think, like, how do these people come together? Like, how do they find each other? Bittaker and Norris were in prison, started talking about their deviant sexual fantasies. How did Carol and Doug, like, find that, common ground with each other? How did it go from, meeting to what it became? There must have been something within both of them that they shared with each other that manifested into what it was.
Well, I think after they started having sex, I think it could have been that was probably where Doug laid the groundwork,
Yeah, but then it went from, decapitation, necrophilia. I mean, that's a pretty high, escalation for
Yeah.
even a serial killer,
Yeah.
let alone, two people coming together.
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't know what her fantasy world was like or what she was doing before she met him. And, there's speculation about him killing earlier
Yeah.
in other
I mean,
places.
she was an ER nurse, so she was probably desensitized to trauma. Seeing people coming in an ER, you're going to see a bunch of different traumatic things people going
Right.
through. So maybe that's one of the things that she found out that she got energized by those things. Some people do. So those
Yeah.
adrenaline. Some people they feed off that that dopamine rush when they see an accident. It's why people slow down at a car wreck. It's why people you don't look, but they can't not look.
Yeah.
And for some people, it's a charge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it is. And I think we all, we're all that every person looks at a car wreck and they're like, oh, you want to see it. That's why true crime is a thing, but it's a
Mhm.
difference from going from there to that turns me on. That
Yeah.
gives me sexual gratification. That takes a certain type of person to go from that to that.
Yeah.
And here's Carol and Doug, who were those people and who found each other again, another killing duo.
Right.
Yeah. Well, this has been fascinating. We have so many more. I mean, if there's some else that we go through these recordings and I find that I think will help illustrate stuff more, I think it's worthy to to kind of play them for you and really kind of get your analysis, because it's so confusing. You know,
It is.
it's really confusing. I mean, you know, it almost, like I said, it's almost like her voice, she sounds like a teenager that just got caught by the vice principal, and the vice principal's talking to her and trying to figure out, why did you throw milk at that person's face?
Yeah.
Well, and she has a logical answer for it. And then she goes into this whole ping pong psychosis of events that she kind of figured out for herself and rationalized. It's amazing.
And, you know, I give Mark a lot of credit because he really did like hold her hand to the fire.
He did an
for
amazing
these interviews. He did an amazing job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And if Mark, if someone sends this to you, Mark McNamara is his name, he's author. If someone sends you this podcast, we'd love to have you on to hear your experience with her, because you did a masterful work with her. You did really amazing.
Incredible. Yeah. He did not let up for a second. He held her accountable for everything, went back at her. An amazing interview.
Yeah. All right, Laura. All right. We'll talk to you next week.
Yep.
Please visit our website where you can subscribe to the podcast, find show notes, and check out extra content from all of our podcasts. All rights reserved. This has been a production of 722 Media Content.